The night felt heavier than usual, soaked in silence and the faint burn of cheap liquor that lingered in the air. Like an unspoken confession, he sat alone in his dimly lit apartment, elbows resting on the table, staring into a glass he hadn't meant to refill so many times. Outside, the rain fell in uneven rhythms, tapping against the window as if trying to remind him the world was still moving. He had almost convinced himself to go to bed when a soft knock interrupted the stillness, so quiet it could have been mistaken for the wind. He froze, listening. Then it came again, slightly firmer, carrying a strange urgency. With a sigh, he pushed himself up and walked to the door, his mind already running through possibilities he didn't like. When he opened it, he wasn't prepared for her. She stood there, trembling, her clothes soaked through, strands of wet hair stuck to her pale face. Her eyes held something fragile, fear mixed with exhaustion, as though she had been turned away too many times already. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He noticed how tightly she wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to hold together what little warmth she had left. The smell of rain followed her inside when he stepped aside without a word, silently offering shelter, before even asking why she needed it. She hesitated, glancing at him as if expecting him to change his mind. But then she stepped in carefully, almost apologetically. The room felt even smaller now, filled with the quiet tension of two strangers sharing a space neither had planned for. He grabbed an old towel from the chair and handed it to her, avoiding her eyes for a second as he gestured toward the bed in the corner. She didn't move immediately. Instead, she looked down, her voice barely audible as she whispered, "I've nowhere to sleep." The words carried a weight that sobered him more than anything else. He exhaled slowly, then nodded toward the bed again, more firmly this time. "Take it," he said, his tone gentle but certain. She blinked, surprised, as if kindness was something unfamiliar. He didn't wait for her to argue. Picking up a thin blanket, he moved to the floor beside the wall, laying it out without hesitation. The liquor on the table sat forgotten now, replaced by a quiet understanding that sometimes the smallest acts meant the most. Morning came quietly, as if it too didn't want to disturb the fragile peace that had settled overnight. A pale beam of sunlight slipped through the thin curtains, stretching across the small room until it touched the edge of the bed where she lay. For a moment, she didn't move. It had been a long time since she had slept without fear, without the need to wake at every sound, without the cold biting into her bones. But slowly, reality returned. She opened her eyes, blinking at the unfamiliar ceiling, her body tensing until she remembered where she was. The warmth of the blanket, the stillness of the room, it all felt almost unreal. She sat up carefully, glancing around until her eyes fell on him. He was still asleep on the floor, for one arm tucked under his head, the thin blanket barely covering him. In the daylight, he looked different, less guarded, more human, as if the quiet sacrifice of the night had softened something in him. She watched him for a moment, guilt flickering across her face. The bed beneath her felt heavier now, not because of discomfort, but because she knew it wasn't meant for her. Trying not to make noise, she slipped off the bed and stood there awkwardly, unsure of what to do next. Her clothes had dried slightly, but they still carried the damp chill of the night before. She wrapped her arms around herself again, though this time it wasn't just from the cold, was uncertainty. She didn't belong here, not really. As she moved toward the small table, she noticed the glass from last night, the faint smell of liquor still lingering in the room. It told a quiet story of loneliness, of nights spent in silence. She hesitated, then gently picked up the glass and set it aside, as if trying to tidy something that wasn't hers to fix. The slight clink stirred him. He shifted, then slowly opened his eyes, momentarily disoriented, before he saw her standing there. For a second, neither spoke. Then, he pushed himself up, running a hand through his hair. "You're awake," he said, his voice rough with sleep. She nodded, her fingers tightening together. "I didn't mean to take your bed," she said softly, her eyes lowering. He shook his head, dismissing it like it was nothing. "You needed it more." There was a pause, thick with unspoken things. She looked at him again, searching his face as if trying to understand why he had helped her, why a stranger would choose the cold floor over comfort. "Thank you," she whispered. In this time, her voice carried more than exhaustion, it carried sincerity. He gave a small nod, not quite meeting her eyes, as if gratitude made him uncomfortable. But something had shifted between them. The distance of strangers was still there, yet it no longer felt as wide as it had the night before. The day unfolded slowly, neither of them in a hurry to break the quiet understanding that had formed between them. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a soft, washed-out sky that filtered gentle light into the room. He had made some tea, nothing fancy, just something warm. Mand handed her a cup without saying much. She accepted it with both hands, as if even that small gesture carried weight. They sat across from each other, in silence at first, the kind that no longer felt awkward, just unfamiliar. Hours passed in fragments of conversation. She spoke carefully, revealing pieces of her story, like someone unsure how much truth the world could handle. She hadn't planned to end up at his door. Life had simply unraveled. A lost job, a broken trust, doors closing one after another, until the streets felt like the only place left. She didn't ask for pity, and he didn't offer it. He just listened, quietly, the way no one had in a long time. He didn't share much about himself, only that the apartment had always been too quiet, that the nights felt longer than they should. The liquor on the table remained untouched now, pushed slightly aside, as if it no longer held the same pull. For the first time in a while, the silence didn't feel like something he needed to escape. By late afternoon, she stood near the door again, the same place she had been the night before. But everything felt different now. She wasn't trembling anymore, but there was still uncertainty in her eyes. I should go, she said softly, though her voice lacked conviction. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching her for a moment. Do you have somewhere to go? He asked. She hesitated. That pause was enough of an answer. He exhaled quietly, then gestured back toward the room. You don't have to figure everything out today, he said. You can stay. Until you do. Her eyes widened slightly, caught between disbelief and relief. Why? She asked, almost afraid of the answer. He shrugged, a faint, almost tired smile forming. Because last night, you needed a bed, he said. And today, maybe you just need time. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then, she nodded, her eyes glistening, not with sadness this time, but something softer, something closer to hope. She stepped away from the door, back into the room. And in that small, quiet space, two strangers found something unexpected. Not just shelter, but the beginning of trust.